Hey guys, this is Brett Young, Taylor Young, and Rod Erb, and you're tuned in to the Be Extraordinary podcast with Erb and Young. Real conversations about business, leadership, and personal development. Welcome back to another episode of the Be Extraordinary podcast. I have Mr. Taylor Young and Mr. Rod Erb, and I tell you what, when you have some specific guests on this podcast or in general, you just have these amazing conversations afterwards and dialogue, and we really wanted to kind of unpack the last guest that we had on the show, which was David Gabrielson from Capital Premium Finance. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to that because there are just some incredible nuggets that the three of us got from that we wanted to kind of unpack today because they're just so relevant to our journey. I know, and thought it would be cool to share this and kind of have some dialogue on air about it just because it was so impactful for us. So, I know we have a couple notes that we wanted to kind of debrief on, and it means different things to all of us. But, man, what was you guys' just thoughts on that conversation? And a lot of it was just him telling his story and us listening. But, man, we've heard it before, but it seems to be more impactful every time. I don't know what you guys thought about that, but I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think a couple of things I picked up was just the power of active faith. I mean, to be able to believe that you're going to win in the end, but face your brutal facts of reality is the Stockdale paradox I referenced in a group that we're in yesterday. I thought about that a lot, the challenging story that he had, but the relentless efforts that he was putting in every day, every week, every month, every year. And the compounding of that has made something magical in regards to the impact that company's had on the insurance space, but really his community and the world around him. And so that was my biggest takeaway, those two things together, and the level of belief that we talked about that you can just feel through somebody's message and the conviction and how that transfers into the way I heard that. And I'd heard that story multiple times. It's probably the third time I've heard parts of that story, but the biggest impact by far for me where I am.
I listened to him, and again, similar to you, we've heard that story a bunch of times. We've seen it, we've felt it, but I continue to go deeper and feel deeper with him in a pay it forward kind of way. What he came from, what he overcame, the things he's overcome personally, professionally, inside of his family that he openly is and humbly talks about, but the pay it forward mentality of, and I think he would say, you got to spend money to make money sort of thing. He's a class act in my book. He's genuine. He's authentic. You can tell that he feels, but having been around him and seen his passion for giving, and what you just said about belief, I was making notes thinking to myself, I talk a lot about belief, inside of our walls with our teams. And as we've always talked about a lot of belief, and sometimes we get deep and we say, well, if you don't believe like me, then just borrow some of my belief. And what resonated with me, especially in this last episode, was, what does that mean? What does it mean to borrow my belief, Brad? It's like, you're not on my level yet of belief, of where we're going, where we've come from, and what we stand for.
What's possible.
So just what's possible. So just borrow some of mine. What does that mean? What does that mean? So it's got wheels turning inside of me to be able to define what I believe in. Think about our journey. What do I believe in? Who do I believe Erb and Young is? Who do I believe Rod is as an individual, as a leader, as a mentor, or whatever, a coach, whatever. And then I think it will be a little bit easier to explain to people, here's what you can borrow from, right? If you don't necessarily think or believe on my level yet. But yeah, we've heard that 100 times, right? If you're going to do anything worth anything, you've got to have a big belief. And I think sometimes that can get lost on people, and especially listening to David again, that just resonates with me very, very strongly and clearly.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm on the same page with you guys, and I think that's why we're having this dialogue. It's just like there's belief in what you can do and what's possible in the future. But to me, for him, what stuck out to me is belief in why, his purpose. Like, you know, it's one thing to say, I have big belief in what we can accomplish. And I think that's important. But then I think there's another level of belief that says, I have belief in why this is so important for me to do this. Mm-hmm. And like, that's what stuck out to me is like, man, do you believe that what you're doing in your business is bigger than just numbers? It's bigger than, he believes that I'm put here by a higher power to impact people's lives. And that premium financing is what he is called to do. Mm-hmm. Like, how many, that's such a niche, and some people listening to this don't even know what that is.
Right.
We're financing insurance premiums. They didn't even know you did this. And he fundamentally believes with every single ounce in him that he was called to do this. And it just radiates from him. So it's like, for me, I think there's a belief in what you can accomplish and creating a better future and all the things that come from the game that we're in of entrepreneurship. But I think there's this next level of purpose that I draw from to say, that's just a completely different level, and it feels different when you're talking to somebody like that.
It's interesting that you say that, and I appreciate that perspective. I didn't think of it that way, but you're so right. And I also think back to, I think one of the comments you made about caring more, or and I wrote that down too. It's like how can somebody care more than a founder? And I think he said something along those lines, or how do you get someone to care to the level of a founder? And what you just said right there, the reason he believes that way, in my opinion, it just became a little clear to me, is because that higher calling is in his head. Yeah. That's why it matters more to him. Yeah. I think he feels a responsibility to the families and to his, to his team and all that, and all that stuff that I maybe just brushed upon. But what you just said, to take it to a deeper level, I believe it's tied together, and that caring happens more just because of it being a higher calling.
Well, I don't know if you guys ever feel this way when you talk about belief, but sometimes sometimes I'll get in modes where I'm like, man, like, is what we're doing really matter? Does it really matter that much? Okay, yeah, I want to build a business, and I want to take care of my family, but is it cheesy to say that, what we're doing really matters? And sometimes I'll find, but then I think about, even if you're an agent selling a homeowner's policy, hey, is what I'm doing even matter? So they're going to buy it somewhere. They're closing on a house. Like, am I making impact? I mean, how many professionals ask that question? And there's almost like, to me, this, find your why, right? And I always struggled with that because I didn't have this really like strong why. And, always thought like you'd find your why, like serving the homeless or feeding the hungry or down on a mission trip in a third world country, right? But the beauty of finding that level of purpose and belief in the impact within what you do every single day, that's right in front of your face, that you've been given gifts to be able to communicate, to be able to, all these things that you've done as an entrepreneur, or leader, or profession, to find purpose there and belief there. Right. And so that's what it showed me. And then what does that mean to that ecosystem that you're already in? You already come to work every day. You already show up with a business owner or business builder hat on, whatever it is for you. But most days, maybe your level of belief's at a 2 or 3 out of 10, right? Or a 6 or 7. And you have some good days and you're at 9s and 10s and 8s. But I'm just curious of the person that is showing up to a thing, and me included. What's your level of belief, and then how does that impact what you're doing and the people you're touching every single day?
I hear you too, man, and I circle back on this, and it's not something that I've probably given enough energy or attention to, but he said something about this, what I'm doing is because of God, right? And I don't mean to be spiritual or extra spiritual or make people uncomfortable.
How dare you?
Right, how dare you? But you think to yourself, he would tell you that what he has done has not been of his hand. He would tell you that what he has done is because of his calling from God, right? He calls it his Savior, or the Savior. I don't think that's something we give enough attention to, right? Yeah. If you assemble gifts, if you take the three of us, clearly there's way more people now than just the three of us. But the origin was our gifts. What were our gifts when we started? Maybe one of those gifts was to assemble people, right? So if you look at a team of almost 50, or you look at revenues, or you look at David with 180 employees and however many millions in revenues,
hundreds of millions
of dollars in revenue,
yeah,
he would tell you, and I think it's worthy of attention, it's not of his hand. Nothing we've done, nothing we do is of our hand, it's of God's hands. And even in my own personal spiritual journey and the things I'm learning about myself now,
yeah,
I want to give more attention to that personally.
Dude.
And I love the fact that we're kind of learning some things here, at least for me.
That's such a cool perspective, because I look at him and I first of all, I borrow from that too, is to say, you know, we're in this cool journey of becoming, right? And one of the biggest threats of becoming more is the idea that you know that you are at cause, right? Meaning I have a hand in how this works, because that's how you take responsibility over outcomes. But there's also this dichotomy that says, yes, you have a hand in it, but you are only one hand in of it, and you are the smaller hand in of it. So it's like there's this weird place of like I take responsibility, so I know that what happens in my life I'm responsible for. But there's this greater overlay that says everything that happens is beyond what I can do is here. And I think that's just, you know, how big his belief is so big, and he's stretching to make such big accomplishments and such big impact that it's almost illogical to think that you as one person could do it, right? Whereas I look at my own life like, well, the things that I'm trying to accomplish, are they too small? Because then it could be because of me.
Sure.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's like if you have these big, audacious, amazing, purpose-driven goals that are beyond the scope of what's even reasonable, well, then it's more logical to think that, well, it has to have the help of something and something bigger than myself, right? And when I hear him speak to that, to your point, I just see an authentic humility to where I want that's attractive to me. And I mean, it's no shock to me that people have lined up throughout his entire career to follow him, whether it's clients, employees, or partners, because I see something where I would want that. I want more of that. I want to be more like that, like you're saying, right? And I think you're right. I think it's a huge skill, but I also think it's a learned through hard knocks. I think you watch the pain in his eyes of being humbled multiple times, and it's authentic.
You talk about that pain, right? I remember the portion of the episode where he was talking about from 2005 through 2017, 12 years of leaving on Monday, coming home on Friday. You know, and as he said, if God or if the Lord hadn't given him celiac disease and forced his hand and stopped traveling, he would continue to be traveling. So I feel like there's somebody speaking to him there about, you know, you're pursuing something and you're growing something big, to his point at the end of the podcast. But if you have a failed family, or if you have failed relationships close to home, then are you really successful?
Well, how about he said that, you know, he was forced to move to Utah. He had to start over, right? There was a fraud situation, and he framed it with, you know, God knew that I wasn't able to build the business we wanted there, so he made me start over in Utah, and then he owned the Utah market. The point is, bad things occurred, things happened, but he framed it in a way that, well, I don't know what's best. This higher power knows what's best, and I'm just an instrument of that. Mm-hmm. So they knew, God knew that I couldn't do it here, so he moved me here. Instead, he's like, well, it was so challenging, it was so hard, and unfortunately, this is what happened to happen. And he framed it as like, no, it's all working for me instead of working against me. And I would always wonder, maybe next time we have on the podcast, is like, did you think that and believe that and know that in the moment? Or is it's obviously always easier when you're past it, but I would love to go back.
But if you don't believe it in the moment, you're not going to keep going.
Yeah.
To some extent. I mean, I'm sure it's way easier in hindsight to point out the 10 things that he pointed out that in the moment you're saying, okay, back to when he was 8 years old to when he was, moved to Utah. But to to active faith and to belief, if you have some level of belief
You're gonna keep
that
going.
this may be something that is meant to happen so you can learn a lesson that you have no idea, right? He did admit that, right? Like, I have no idea how I'm going to use this when something bad happens, quote unquote bad, right? I have no idea how I'm going to use this, but I have faith that it will show itself. If I do my part, that's the part for me that I tie back, is it's one thing to believe, but if you truly believe, then you have an urgency. You have an urgency to live. You have an urgency to work and to create and do the things that your gifts, to understand what your gifts are, to be able to give them in a way. And of course you want to take care of your family. Of course, like, how about that? Like, unapologetically, like, to take care of your family and make money and create something magical and employ people and contribute. Like, I just believe as an entrepreneur, you know, I like how he said it's not everyone's calling, but there's something to me deep into the creation aspect of it. It's like, I believe that we're meant to create stuff. It may be different it may be music for somebody. It may be sports for somebody. It may be art. It may be podcasts for some people. But like, creation of a thing, of a company, of a career, of a product, of anything like that, inherently, I believe, is within us. And we're able to express that creation through what we do. And when that happens, to me, that's when you get in the flow state. That's when you start to feel that energy, and then you can transfer that energy towards to what you're doing, right? You can't tell me that your level of belief, when you sit down with somebody and you're looking to hire and recruit, that they can't feel that. You can't fake that, right? But you can't tell me when you sit down on a sales call that somebody can't feel your belief in what you do. Yeah. So, you know, that's to me it's this little reminder that go, okay, that belief it pours out and it's effective in whatever I'm doing, and it's not just loss. It's not just this thing that you're attributing something to, and it's not in hindsight. It's in the moment that it can actually affect what you're doing in a big way.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, the fact that you're talking about from a creation standpoint, you know, and I'm reading a book right now that's really awesome. And one of the major aspects of the reading is talking about anything with intelligent design comes from a mind, right? Anything of intelligent design comes from some sort of mind, right? You know, which means somebody engineered it, right?
Meaning the iPhone was created.
It didn't just come together
by a mind.
It came together by a mind.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you look at life, it's for me, I just look at, for my belief, it came from a mind, some sort of mind, right? And I think when you create something, it's almost like you're tapping into the divine. That's why you feel that way. It's in God's image, right? You're doing something that you can't explain that it fulfills you. And my belief is you get closer to the maker when you're doing something like that. That's why you're filled up. It's why you're excited with that. So I do think that's important, just for a fulfilling life, an extraordinary life. And it doesn't have to be entrepreneurship for you. It just happens to be the instrument that we, you know, paint through. But think about how I think about, like, my life when I've been, you know, depressed. I feel like in my life when I've been in a dump. I feel like when I've been down. I feel like when I've been challenged, when I'm not in a good place. Usually it's because I'm not creating. Mm-hmm. You know, it's because I'm just going through the motions. I'm just doing the deal, right? Like, and finding that for me, I know I went through a pretty dark space, and I found music. And so I started creating music, right? I started, that was a big filler for me. And I felt it kind of brought me back to life again. So to your point, and I know you're shaking your head because you guys know this, you know, about
green stickers,
you know, well, and I loved it, and it filled me up.
I have to stop you, dude. I have to stop you because I'm sitting next to this device, right? And so much of what you do now is content creation. Music led you into editing and creating music, which led you into video and editing video. And now you're able to use these skills and these gifts that at one point were to draw you out of a very dark place, but then be able to now use them in the effort to help a cause and a mission and use those skills. Yeah. So what is that thing called?
Damn.
Controller.
It's a controller. It's got all these devices. It looks like a DJ device. And
Brett's like, yeah, man, I can mix the music right now.
Has become super comfortable with this world mainly because of, I remember I used to go on family vacations and Brett would be there on his MacBook just making music and editing music for hours and hours and hours. And I couldn't help but think, man, what a waste of time. What a waste of time.
That's so funny.
But you never know that it would come back in that setting and you'd be able to use it in what you're doing now.
I think about like that. That's a cool, number one, I never thought about that. That's really, really cool.
God knows I did.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks a lot.
God knows I did for a long time.
Share that.
We're like, come to the beach.
How's it feel to let that off?
I'm like, bro, let's go. Let's go to the beach, man.
Let that off your chest,
pack
man.
a cooler and let's go to the beach. He's like, no, man, I got this. I'm making this song. And I'm like,
the sick beat, man.
This dude is
Green
never
sticker,
gonna
man.
release a song, and he's sitting here spending hours on creating music. Why is
so
he doing
funny.
this?
Well, that's funny because the intro music of this podcast is a song that I made, so that's really cool. But anyway, that comes back to like the framing of moving to Utah, right? If life's happening for you, right? Like you don't know why all the time, but you have active faith that you're going to draw. I mean, Hormozy talked about it that, when he went to zero, and he thought to himself, there's this thought that you're going to waste your time in entrepreneurship, but it's not what you've created, it's who you've become and the skill sets that you have. And I think about David's story in regards to, he from the fraud to having to move to another area where you don't know anybody and start over and you have debt and all these different things. And it's like, it would be so easy to say life's happening to you, but to have that act of faith to say, I don't know what it is, but I've learned these certain things and these situations and these experiences that are going to help me grow this to even bigger. I don't know if you can get out of this game without experiencing that type of story multiple times.
You talk about that act of faith, though. It's like I always call that what's in it for me, right? It's like to the person that's not going to be here for 20 years, if you're going to be here for whatever time, what can you gain experience-wise out of your role, or what can you gain out of time at a company, or what can you gain out of a trial or tribulation? I mean, there's something to gain that, and you've called it before, a transferable skill, right? It's like, what am I learning that transfers? I learned it here. It might have been part of my role, but even if it wasn't, can I take it with me to the next whatever it is? And
that's like saying that he said failure and entrepreneurship are companions, right? Failure only works with you and works for you if you believe it does, in my opinion. Like, right? Like if you if the failure's not worth anything unless you take with it lessons that have been learned.
Yeah, but that's not our society, though.
Right, but I just think about what happens if you didn't believe or don't look at it as the failure. What if you look at it as a waste of time?
Right.
Then it is a waste of time.
Right, that's my point.
But if you look at it as this truly is something that's going to build me into something where I can grow past that, then it is. So it's almost arguable to say that your belief in the experience dictates what happens after that, right? Yeah. It's almost like belief is the presupposition of everything that happens in your life.
Well, think about if he's like, hey, Brett, let's pack a cooler, let's go to the beach, and you go, no, man, I'm in the middle of this, I can't let it go, and you go, man, that's such a waste of time, and you go, according to who?
Yeah.
Right. Well, how long is your time horizon? Right. That's what I think about.
Oh, wow.
Because to me, it's a waste of time in the moment because you're not going to get a platinum record. Right. You're not going to be. It's not going to be a lesson.
I'm going to miss cocktails on the beach.
Hey,
with my brother,
who knows? Right. Exactly. You got plenty of opportunities to do that. But I will say, I'm thinking about my own story throughout. Just you think about. I got asked to go speak to my high school. Right. And I'm thinking about, man, what a cool opportunity. Yeah. Because I get to speak to these kids. I was one of them. I was one of them. I thought I had all this time. I was worried about all these things that I could, I get to share and experience in a real way. And, but what came up is like, honor the season. You're in high school. Be in high school. Like whatever to you at that time that is showing up that you're passionate about, that there's skills that like honor it. Honor it and do your best, right? Do your best because you don't know what's coming. I think about, I played high school basketball, had an opportunity to play in college, led me to UCF. After UCF basketball, I get asked to do the radio, couldn't publicly speak worth anything, was nervous as I could ever be. Get to do the radio. I do that for 12 years, hone my craft in speaking while we build this insurance business. And now one of the biggest things I do for this business is speak about stuff. Right?
Dude, that's so true.
Right? And it's a community that we're embedded in, and we were just able to speak to the business school, but you would never know at the time, right? You're just doing it because there's these little breadcrumbs, but honor that season and don't get ahead of that season, but don't also stay behind in the season. Just be in the season you are and do your best. And that's why I come back to the urgency. I come back to the urgency. It's your job to honor that season, right? You have the choice and the free will to listen and have urgency towards your gifts, or you have the opportunity to distract yourself and to put up walls and not be open to it and live in the past or way too far out in the future. And, you know, I just, that's coming to me lately, man. And I believe that we're in this season that we are in for a reason. Yeah. And I want to honor that season, you know, and because who knows what's to come.
That's so cool. Yeah, and people that don't know, like, you couldn't speak at all growing up. You murmured, you mumbled, you didn't, you know, you just couldn't. Speaking was like something that was like a problem. You know, mom and dad were like, "Hey, you got to speak up." And now, you know, you're the most articulate, you know, person I know as far as podcasts and speaking. Well, and all that stuff. It's like a completely different person.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate that. But I even think about the high school experience. Like I was given the gift of basketball. I had so much built up like insecurity and rage, but I had this vehicle. And I had like, then this vehicle ended up taking me somewhere, you know, and then gave me a little bit more time to figure that out. So yeah, no, it's so funny. I was a 0 out of 10, as far as the speaking scale, I was like a -4. I was an embarrassment to the family when we would go to dinner.
So at least you weren't making beats at family reunion, you know, missing cocktails on the beach.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
That's funny, man. Well, the second thing I wanted to kind of get you guys' perspective on was just work ethic, man. Like, he's built this business. He owns 95% of the market in 2 states. It would be so easy to say, all right, I'm going to hire a sales team, and then the sales team's going to, which I know he did.
Well, yeah.
But then just the idea that you're going to be the one that gets on the plane Monday through Friday, 3 weeks out of the year, and go knock on doors in places that you can't even get to by a car.
It doesn't make sense, right?
It's like the only reason you do it is because you just believe that there's something way bigger here going on than just you.
Disproportionate
right?
belief.
It's just.
Well, I remember hearing stories about him having sales teams, and he's like, "Here's what I'm doing. Tell me, let's compare notes. What are you doing?" It's like, you know, I mean, I in those early days, they ran through those relationships because they couldn't keep up with him.
Right.
You know, and I mean, you just made a statement, right? It's like, it doesn't make sense. And I'm thinking, to everybody but him, right? I mean, to him.
Until it does, right?
To him, there's no other way.
It's obvious.
It's
For
obvious.
him, it's obvious.
Because of what? His belief.
His belief, man.
His belief makes it obvious. Other people look at that and go, like, dude, like, why would you go get on a plane? Why would you go knock on the door and drive over there and spend gas money when you can DM them, you can Zoom them, you can, and I'm not condemning those things. Those are a great tool. But make no mistake, you're doing that calculation. It's like, is this going to be worth it?
He said you need to see the white in their eyes.
And
it's like, you could do it a different way, but a guy who's built, you know, a $1 billion enterprise, he might be somebody you want to talk to. He might be somebody you want to model. And I don't know about you, technology may have changed, but human behavior does not. No. We're all the same that we were 20, 30 years ago. And the reality is, I know if I have somebody who's cared enough to come see me on a plane ride, I'm going to give him more attention. I'm going to give him more. And he said, I care more. Well, his actions are matching with his value prop. His value prop is, I care more than the next person that's going to walk in here. And inherently, you knew that he cared more when he walked in, because nobody's going to do that.
And I hear 2 things, right? It's like he loved premium finance. It was what did he say? It was how much it fired him up. He made a reference to how much it fired him up. So you have his knowledge of the craft. And then you have his passion for seeing the whites in somebody's eyes, which I completely subscribe to.
I know
right?
You love that.
I mean, that is, to me, that's the height of, well, I'm an old school guy, I'm just going to continue to make calls. No, you just care more. You understand the importance of shaking someone's hand.
You're the epitome of that, because Rod will drive 4 hours for a handshake, and I know.
No, I've literally.
Literally, he will do it.
And you're like, dude, what are you doing?
And you go, that doesn't make any sense, and it makes. For him, it's obvious.
Yes.
It's the same thing as David. And the point is, it's not about the drive, and it's not about the in-person. The point is, when that person knows that I showed up, they will know, instead of me telling them that I care more, they'll know inherently that I care more, because my actions line up with what I'm trying to convey. And it's like, it's almost as if, like, do the stuff that doesn't make any sense, and then it'll make sense.
Yeah, exactly. Why everyone else is trying to make it make sense.
Yes.
You do the stuff that doesn't make sense, and then it's going to make a lot of dollars and cents. You know, like, I can't help but think of Rod, too, because Also, like, you have that gift. Like, that is embedded in you in somewhere, that you have mixed your background with golf, with everything that led you to this point, past professional experiences, to the etiquette and the way you handle yourself with this stuff, to do stuff that doesn't make sense over a long period of time. And it makes you, everyone that knows you would go, yeah, dude, that's Rod's
all of
gift.
it
That's
is
a superpower.
all of it is geared towards making other people feel extremely appreciated. Every person that you interact with, every exchange, it comes from a place of you want to make people feel as if they're really important. And it's very obvious because, you know, I don't know another person who's built this cool web and network of people that absolutely love and adore you. I know people come to me all the time. There's just something about Rod. And I'm like, I know what it is about Rod. Rod does all the shit that nobody else wants to do because he cares more than everybody else.
You could drop you in the middle of, like, you parachute into a second world country and you'd be the mayor by high noon the next day. But I do want to talk about caring. We talk about transferable skills. We talk about different ways, whether you're going and driving and getting on a plane to see the whites in the eyes. How about that? You're going to Salt Lake City because they had the flights out at the time. It wasn't as connected of a world, right? So that's the airport that's going to allow you to get on a plane every week, right? And so that stuff changes, right? It might be flying, it might be driving, it might be DMing, it might be Zooming, it might be picking up the phone,
knocking on doors, golf tournaments, trade shows. It all changes.
Yes, all the above, right? But at the end of the day, you care more doesn't change. We talk about that. The minute he said it, we all three looked at it and said, okay, yeah, the guy that cares more is going to figure out the technology. The guy that cares more is going to figure out what he's doing wrong with the product so they can fix the product and then they can get it back out there, right? The guy that cares more is just going to do more reps because they're going to have a higher belief that says, no, they shouldn't work with the other guy. They should work with me, right? Because I care more. Yeah. So there's something about that. You speak to that about what, you know, the transferring of just, you can't take away the fact that if somebody cares more, they're going to do more.
Well, and I think his caring is directly related to his belief, and I think both of those things go hand in hand for him. So, and he even mentioned it as far as insurance. I mean, he gave a clinic on why you should have a high level of belief in why you do insurance, right? If you listen to the end of that podcast, anybody that's in the insurance business should go listen to that, and you should just borrow from that. He just said, it saved my family in their time of need. We have a huge burden and responsibility. What we do matters more than anything. It's about protecting families and protecting what people have, and there's no other industry like it, and it's a huge I mean, it's like he has belief in what we do higher than 99% of the people that actually do what we do.
Very, very
It's just like, so if you're in this business and whatever you do, you have got to manufacture a deep reason why what you do actually matters. And until you do that, your level of urgency isn't going to match what someone else's, and your level of caring is not going to match somebody else's. You got to figure out that's why people say find your why. And it's like, I don't know my why. No. You gotta go deep and figure something out, because if you don't, you can't compete with the David Gabriel.
Well, and it's like that for anything. I mean, if you want to go pump gas, I mean, you know,
because
it's going to boil down to something, no matter where you go,
100%.
that it's going to point to why you believe in something.
And why is it important? Because somebody you're competing with has a deep belief that you maybe don't have, and doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to be able to compete with that.
And how about this? Culture. People always, we talk about culture a ton, right? And I remember years ago being approached by somebody and saying, hey, what are you guys doing? Like, because we want, and I could just tell, like we don't do it to do it. We do it because we care.
Well, like that's what we love.
That is, and then the things that we've done over time have changed, but it's like, you can't tell somebody, hey, do this bowling event because it was really effective.
Yeah. Right. Everybody left really pumped, and we got 3 weeks of good productivity.
Because if you think about it, you have to care enough, like you mentioned, like if you're selling insurance, but if you're a business owner, right? And it's okay for those two things to coexist. We talk about bottlenecks in business as hiring people. Like, okay, well then if that's a big bottleneck, like maybe we should reflect as business owners how we can find a deeper conviction to care about people. To care about the people that choose to come to work every single day and leave their heart on the line for the company that we own. Maybe we should spend more time looking for things, maybe not just feeling, oh, what is it? No, look for them. Spend the time to look for them, because if you as a business owner, if we're competing, you're business A and I'm business B, and Rod cares so much about people and the people that come to work for him that he's willing to go to the front lines with them, well, then he's going to figure out what event to do. He's going to figure out what promotion to run. He's going to figure out all the how-tos. He's going to figure out how to recognize people in a real, authentic, genuine way and create platforms and create leaders, right? And for me, I'm going to be looking at Rod and be like, hey, man, what'd you do that works?
Yeah, give me the X's.
Give me, hey, now
Yeah.
that you pioneered it, give me what works, because I don't necessarily want to spend the money or spend the time and do the stuff that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well,
right? Until it does. So
Yeah.
I just think, to your point about finding the why, if you don't have the conviction, listen, find it. Spend time reflecting, because it's worth it, because it's going to ooze out in the way, that we're talking about.
Well, he gave a story, and he linked the story to the reason why insurance is so valuable, right? And so powerful. So if you don't know what your reason why is, you don't know what it's about, you say borrow belief. Like, to me, that sounds like go find a story. Go find a story that moves you, whether it's you or somebody else. Go find something and link it to why what you do actually matters. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be your story. It could be somebody else's story.
That's right.
But go find it, because that is the jet fuel. And to your point, it's like you're going to be the person that just says, well, tell me all the things that I need to do and I'll just do it. Give me the X's and O's and I'll just execute the X's and O's and that'll help me get there. No, you're trying to manufacture something that can't be manufactured. You have to get the belief right. You have to get the caring right. You have to give the reason why, because the grit doesn't come unless you're just pulled into this direction by this unquestionable, unexplainable, doesn't make sense-ism that for you it's obvious, but to everybody else says, I don't even know why they're doing that. That doesn't make sense. And if you get to that place, you have the opportunity to do something really, really big. If you can't get there, you're just going to be average.
I've always loved that. Why would you do that? And my wife says that to me all the time. You guys have said that to me from time to time. People have said that to me. And for whatever reason, I find some peace in that.
I think you're a sicko. You just like it.
No,
I think he does
like
when
it.
somebody says, why would you do that? He's thinking, boom, I got another one on the belt.
But see, I also
There's some
think
truth to that.
I don't think everyone should do that. I don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's driving it.
Yeah.
It's you believe that.
Yeah.
That's something that shows
so
up within your
true.
gifts.
No,
and
that could you.
I'm
That's
gonna
a
do
strength
that.
and it's a
I'm gonna-
weakness, though. Just so you know.
Sure.
They sit
Like
side
anything,
by side,
right?
Yeah.
Welcome to achievement. Your
Yep.
biggest strength sits
They
right
do
next
sit
to your
side by
weakness,
side,
and
yeah.
you get the opportunity to work through that and find it out of balance, in balance, and everything between. But I want to spend a little bit of time here, and I'll kick it over to you, Brett. It's like that's not for everyone.
Correct.
That would drive me up the
But
wall.
why him and why not somebody else?
Well, it depends on what you believe in.
Because he believes it.
Yeah,
If that's not your thing, if that's not what it doesn't match up. It's not genuine. You're still trying. You're now. I'm going to do what Rod does because Rod's having success. No, you're trying to
Not a
do what
one-size-fits-all.
Rod does without the belief that it actually matters, and he actually wants to do it. He loves it. He cares. That's important to him.
True story.
So it's like find out what that is first, and then all the actions and the X's O's will align with that.
Well, and David epitomizes that. I mean, you talk about him skiing with you, like that. That's one of those things where it's like, man, I want to ski. David didn't want to ski that day.
He wanted to help.
He
me.
didn't care that Garn and I were ripping down double diamonds. He even though he is a very good skier, he did exactly what he wanted to do that day, which was stay on your wing.
Yep.
He went deep with you.
Yep.
He and you said it. He never one time made you feel like, dang,
was just
man,
doing this
like,
to
I want to
entertain
go
us.
ski.
No.
Not at all.
He wanted to.
Again,
he loved it.
He is the best I've ever seen at that. He is the best I've ever seen at that.
It's amazing. That's a great story, and I also just think you mentioned something. If you don't know, find something. If you watch 10 Netflix documentaries, one of them is going to move. I watched a documentary last night, moved me to tears. Pinky was not home, and I was watching a documentary by myself, and I'm crying by myself on the couch because I'm moved by that specific.
What documentary was it?
It was the American Symphony about John Baptiste and his journey of his wife had cancer and this whole high and low of this experience, and it was incredible. I'd recommend it. Great. And most people might watch that and go, "Yeah, that didn't move me to tears," but it moved me to tears. And what was interesting about that is that if we spent more time of understanding what moves us, and dude, this is even personal, right? And this is between Brett and I. I've struggled. Like, this comes down to even with my own kids and other people's kids when I'm around. I'm not like the playful uncle, dude. Like, I have trouble like with my young kids being like the present playful uncle. And as silly as that sounds, I've cast a lot of judgment and shame my own way about something that simple. But then I realign and reframe that and go, you know what though, man, but I have some other gifts to give to those kids. I love to mentor. I love to teach. I love to be an example, you know? And so that right there is like a real practical way to say, hey, like, let me not look at the other person over there that is doing the things that don't necessarily come natural to me and I don't feel like I'm good at, but let me find something that I can be good at and then give it my all and find ways to do it. So
cool.
So
everyone can relate to that, man.
Amen to that.
Appreciate you sharing that.
No
That's
doubt.
awesome.
No
man.
doubt.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, boys. I mean, we're fortunate to be able to have obviously people in our lives to be able to learn from. That's why I'm happy that we turned the camera on and did this. So hopefully,
No question.
Hopefully, this will help somebody else that's listening. You know, just maybe, and you know, Taylor, you said it before we started, and I'll end here. Is just, you know, hearing his story impacted you this time differently than when you first heard it. And you talked about it even here is the season. It's honoring the season you're in. Just because you've heard something one time or you've watched a documentary one time doesn't mean that it's going to impact you the same as it did 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 5 years ago. We evolve as people. And so, you know, revisiting this stuff and really, he talked about listening to the intuition, right? And that voice inside. And I think we all could do a better job of that. Because it's loud, man.
It is loud.
You know, when's the last time you like listened to what that internal voice, whatever you believe is calling you, and are in touch with that? And I know that's one of the things I'm taking away is that's a powerful, real thing. And I don't spend enough time checking in to know what's that saying. And when I listen to him, he is uniquely connected with that. Of what is being called for him to do, and he said it is available to all of us, right?
Yes, he
did.
He
said it is available
yes,
and it to all of us, and that's another level of belief. So
I hear you, and I love that you just reminded us all of that. And I want everybody, if you've not listened to watch that podcast, the episode that just precedes this one, man, go listen to it.
Yeah,
go listen to it.
Yeah, that's incredible. My parting note, and I'll kick it back to you, Brett, to close this out. Hopefully the listener got something out of this. It may seem all over the place, but I know it was right where it needed to be. And, right. You know, I come back to the fact that, you know, distractions in society, right? How do you listen, Brett? You said that voice is loud, but it's not always loud. Sometimes I can't hear it. Sometimes I can't feel it. Sometimes I'm searching for it. And what I've noticed, and if you can't tell, it's just a certain level of passion that's coming through me right now is, you know, and I'm on 75 hard, right? So I've minimized distractions. I've minimized distractions that usually I grab to, whether it's alcohol, whether it's a party, whether it's a certain type of food that's going to make me feel good. And when those distractions they've been tempered down and quieted and put in their place, there's things that start to show up. Damn. So when I hear you say, listen, you say, well, what does that mean? Well, it just means that I'm not in a judgment way. Look, it's screen time's not bad, right? It's just, if it's out of balance, it's very distracting. Yeah. You know, alcohol's not bad, but when it's out of balance, it's very distracting, right? All these things. And if you can take what it ever is for you and temporarily just lower the meter of distraction and listen, something might come to you that inspires you and moves you to some sort of action that we'd all be grateful for.
Damn.
Dude's just spitting fire.
I don't know. We're gonna have to, Lorenzo. We're gonna have to short clip that one, and then I'm gonna put it in my phone and I'm gonna listen to it every single
Right,
day.
it's gonna be your ringtone.
Yeah, no shit. And
Good-
man,
good
by
words, T-Y.
loud, I mean I think that voice is not. I think the distractions are loud.
Yeah,
so what you said is exactly
Yes.
what my intention was, just to say that, like, unless you are intentional about reducing that noise, it just overwhelms you. I know it does for me. I mean, how about just the schedule? My damn schedule, you know, from week to week. I'm going from event to event to event to event to event to event to event. It's a full-time job just keeping up where I'm supposed to be for that day, you know, in that week. And, you know, sometimes maybe pulling it back and saying, I'm going to say no to a lot of this stuff for the next couple of weeks so I can have more space to be able to check in with myself. Such good thoughts, man. Well, guys, I tell you what, as always, man, appreciate it, man. If you're listening to this and it speaks to you, I would ask you to do something different. Please leave us a comment. And leave, you know, some sort of note on some of these short clips when we post them. I'd love to get some dialogue from everybody on this. So, with that, gentlemen, appreciate everything. Have an awesome day. Be extraordinary.